Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing another installment in our For Real or For Fun series. So, this is a new series that I started up yesterday. So, let me know what you think about this. For this series, I'm going to be examining popular picks that other content creators are trying to hype up, or just things that I see in some of my games that are really off meta. But we're trying to see, is it actually optimal to play these champions, or is it just something that you should be playing for fun? So, is it actually OP? Because all the other content creators will say anything that's different is OP to get clicks, or is it just like okay, or is it sometimes even just outright bad? So that's what we're going to be examining here. Last time we looked at ADTF. Spoiler: the verdict was for fun, not for real. Be sure to go check out that video if you want to know more about that. And this time we're going to be looking at Swain Support. So this is something that people have been asking about a lot. And I'll just go ahead and tell you my verdict. And 1 out of 10 is I think it's for fun. And I think it's a 5 out of 10. So hear me out on this. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Once again, as always, I said with TF and I'll say with all of these, there will be people that find success on this champion. There are people that find success on everything out there under the sun, okay? My recommendation is just for kind of an average player, maybe someone who's in silver, gold, something like that, is this something they should pursue strictly for trying to win more, trying to gain an advantage, trying to climb an elo? I'm not making any judgments as to whether or not it's fun or it's cool or whatever. I'm strictly just looking at, is this something where you can actually pick up more wins than you might pick up with other champions that are more meta? Okay, so let's go ahead and get in here, and I'll have a playlist in the description as well. Pretty soon I'll add that up where you can go through and see all of these for real or for fun champs. And I'm going to try to see if I can do at least maybe 3 or 4 of these a week. We'll see how popular they are and how much time I have. But let me know if you like it. Be sure to like and subscribe, and that way I'll know that people want to see it, and I'll start doing more stuff like this. Okay, so let's look at Swain Support. All right, so first of all, let's just talk about the runes and items real quickly, and then we'll talk about why Swain Support, what are good things about him, what are bad things about him, and then we'll talk about Rory here. No, we won't talk about Rory, but she looks like she's going to come in here and talk to us. Can you say hi, camera?
Hi, Kimma.
I don't know if y'all can hear that, but she said hi, camera. Is that right, Rory? Good job. Okay, but let's look at the runes really quick. So there are a bunch of different options that people can pick for runes, because this is still pretty off meta. I mean, people are asking me and talking about it like everybody under the sun is playing this champion right now. Like, oh my god, have you seen Swain Support? He's tearing up high elo. It's like, well, he's really not. Like, very few people are playing him. If you look at this, like, everyone that has a teleport is not Swain Support. It's Swain in a different lane. And then the ignites and the exhausts are the Swain supports. So on this patch, now this obviously doesn't cover everybody, but there's just not a huge representation, and there's not a huge win rate on it either as support. It's like, it's okay. There's some people playing it, there's some people winning with it, there's some people losing with it. If we look at just all elo brackets in general, under support here on patch 918. Then Swain has less than a 50% win rate. He's got 49, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad, but it certainly means is like, a check mark that it may not be super OP, and it's only being played 2.6% of games. So it's not very popular, and it's like, average in terms of win rate. And then I looked up a one trick that we'll talk about here in a second, but he also has not been winning a ton lately with this. So he plays only Swain Support, and this was the guy, Old Bird Nanny. This is the highest ranked one trick support Swain according to op.gg. This was their highest OP ranked guy, and this week he's only been 22% on it, so he's been losing a ton. He does have 54% overall with it, and he only plays it as support from what I understand. He might play it on the rolls, but this week at least he was only playing it as support. Yeah, it's 100% support. And then over the last couple of weeks, right, over the last like 30 games or whatever, he's had a 36% win rate. So it's by no means like completely tearing it up in OP as everyone says, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't be good in some circumstances. So that's what we're going to be looking at here. Okay, so we've got Electrocute is the most common build. I will say Old Bird goes for Dark Harvest most of the time. This will give you more damage in team fights if you get a lot of resets. So if you're just trying to damage one person and kill them, then Electrocute's going to do more damage. But if you are getting, if you do get this stacked up pretty high, and then like if you have maybe 10 of these stacks by 20 minutes or something like that, then that would be an extra 50 damage. That would be, maybe somewhere around 90 damage per hit. Then if you do 2 people, that'd be 180 damage. That's going to be pretty close to Electrocute later on. It has less scaling than Electrocute with the 0.15. But basically, you need to be able to trigger this twice for late game team fights, and it will do more damage. However, in the lane, if you're just triggering it, kind of on cooldown every 45 seconds, and you could also trigger Electrocute in the same cooldown window, then Electrocute's going to be stronger most of the time. So most people go with Electrocute. That's the most common one. That's what we see up here amongst like most supports that are running this. Some people do go Glacial Augment. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But the most common one for Swain supports is Electrocute still. Just because it's pretty easy to proc it. You hit your E, you pull someone in, you auto attack them, you Q them, boom, it's triggered. Okay, so there's the Electrocute numbers. Its cooldown's 25 seconds versus Dark Harvest 45 seconds, and then it does 30 to 100 damage with a 0.25 ratio. So like I said, even if you have something like 10 souls at 20 minutes, or 10 Dark Harvest procs at 20 minutes, it would only be about 90 damage or so with a 0.15 ratio. So Electrocute's going to be better than that. Late game. Also, in theory, remember, you can be proccing Electrocute much more often in the laning phase. But even later on, against single targets, Electrocute's going to be better. It's only when you're getting those resets, when you're getting a killer and assist, that lowers the cooldown on Dark Harvest. You can get multiple procs in a fight. That's when Dark Harvest really starts coming online. Okay, so Electrocute, you can go Dark Harvest if you want. Those are the main ones. And then the other one that you would see is Glacial Augment. Now, the Glacial Augment's interesting because I do think the best early build, and this is what I see Bird doing, and this kind of makes the most sense to me, too, and we'll talk about items here in a second, but Hextech GLP, that's going to allow you to put kind of the frozen stuff on the ground whenever you freeze people. It'll freeze them for longer, and it'll also allow for, potentially people that you didn't hit with your bolts to also get frozen. So it's interesting. It holds them a little bit longer. You don't do, typically, at least Old Bird doesn't do Twin Shadows. I think that's going a bit far, but I think if you're not doing Twin Shadows, then Glacial Augment's not going to be worth it because Hextech's already probably going to hit most people and is probably going to freeze them or slow them down for a good amount of time. So I don't think that's worth giving up all the other stuff that you get in the Domination tree for that. Like Cheap Shot and potentially Ingenious Hunter and stuff like that. So anyways, you can do this if you want. I think GLP is enough slow because I don't think Twin Shadows is optimal. I think you need to be getting another business item like Zonya's typically is super important to get on him, like second item, or even Leandri's. So I don't recommend that, although I did think about it. I just really don't think you want to go this rune unless you're going both GLP and Twin Shadows on a champion to get enough value out of it. But yeah, either Electrocute or Dark Harvest, Cheap Shot, very good. I don't remember if it's just movement impaired. Let me pull it up. I think it might have to be a stun. If it's movement impaired, you can definitely trigger that. I think it might just be movement impaired, yeah. But the ability that impairs itself does not count. You have to damage them, so you have to land an auto. But basically, if you do land your E on somebody and then auto attack them, that counts. Or if you use your GLP or whatever to slow somebody and auto attack them, that counts. So that's pretty good damage in the landing phase if you're consistently landing your E's. So Cheap Shot's solid. You could also go Taste of Blood, which is pretty good sustain in the landing phase as well. Eyeball Collection is really one of the only choices there. I think that if you're going support, Ghost Poro is actually something. This is something that a lot of people don't talk about, but I've done several videos about this. It is one of the fastest scaling of these. So these are all very similar. You get stacks in certain ways, and then eventually you get up to 20 ability power, and when you get all the stacks, you get 30 ability power. Each one of these does it. It's just a question of how do you want to stack. So Ghost Poro is whenever a ward dies, then you get 2 stacks. And then whenever the Ghost Poro sees somebody, you get an additional 2 stacks. or you get 1 stack, which gives you 2 ability power. So basically, if you place your early wards that time out in 1 minute up in the forward brush, it gives you vision there, and then it's very, very likely that the Ghost Poro is going to spot them as well when they appear. One trick that you can do early on is you walk up and you put the ward in the middle of the lane where they're going to be farming, and then it will time out immediately as soon as they get to the lane, and that'll give you 4 extra AP at the start. So you do give up your ward to do that, so I would only do that if you think that the enemy jungler is not going to come gank you at level 2, if you're very confident in that. But you can just do it a more traditional way, you know, just ward somewhere else, and it can give you some lingering vision for 60 seconds. So very nice to put in, especially like a tri-bush or a river bush or something like that. It can help you out a ton. But basically, like, I think you can have this stacked up most of the time because you're going to get a ward item as well, obviously pretty quickly. Then you can get this stacked up by like 15 minutes, like no problem. If you're really on top of it, really like getting those Ghost Porters to see people, you can get it stacked pretty quickly. So I like that one. This one is you get 1 every time you get a takedown, a kill, or an assist, which this is what it's going to come down to. Do you think that you're going to get 10 kills and assists before around 15 minutes? Or do you think it's more likely that you're either going to spawn 10 wards or have people walk over your Poro in those wards? Rory, be careful. In 10 minutes. Or in 15 minutes. So I think it's much more likely, depending on your elo bracket, I think it's more likely that you're going to be able to get it with the wards than you would be able to get it with... Rory, what is that? No. Let me see that. Let me see it. Rory, they got some food in there. Rory, mommy. Oh my goodness. Are you okay? Oh, she stood up and bonked her head.
You need cold. You need some cold. Come here.
Yeah, you gotta be careful crawling under stuff. Be careful, you almost bonked it again.
You're too tall to stand.
You're a tall baby, aren't you?
Tables.
Oh, she's okay. It just feels weird. She said, hey, cold.
Okay, we'll get you some cold.
Okay.
Get you some cold. Where did you want?
So yeah, I personally think a lot of people just default to eyeball collection because that's what had been good for a really long time. But I still think that Ghost Poro is really good. It also gives you just vision on the side for the whole game. It's actually useful because it can give you extra vision. Now, yeah, it's not often game breaking, the Poro, because the vision kind of sucks. It's only 450 range and they can see it. But it's better than nothing. So I like Ghost Poro better. If you're in this tree and you want something, I just think that it's much more likely that you can manage the wards and have either 10 wards time out or like 5 wards time out and 5 Ghost Poros spot people. I think some combination of that is going to be much more likely, faster than 10 kills or assists. But I think a lot of people just don't even think about it. They just default to eyeball collection because whatever. So anyways, but remember that you keep that special vision even after you time out. You still get the Poro, or even after you get this fully stacked, you still get the Poros. So it still gives you vision throughout the whole game. So stacks faster and extra utility. I think it's a winner. Now, Ingenious Hunter. So this is one that is the most sort of contested among pretty much anybody that goes in the domination tree is which one of these you get a lot of times. Because they're all really good. You do see some people get Ultimate Hunter, which is very nice. It's 25%. Hi, Rory. What do you want?
Rory, come pick up a plate for your one.
It is 25% extra cooldown reduction on your ult, which is handy. You have Relentless Hunter. The movement speed is always good. You can't really go wrong there. Ingenious Hunter is situational but can be good. And then Ravenous Hunter
Green or purple? You want green?
gives you a lot of extra sustain in the laning phase. So this is really, really good. I wish that they would put one of these hunters like up somewhere else. Hi. Are you saying hi, Rory? You wanting up here? You just trying to like crash this video? Is that what it is? Okay, don't type on anything now. You can sit here, but don't type. You want some food, Rory? Yummy, yummy. Now, the old bird does Ingenious Hunter. Now, a lot of other people don't do Ingenious Hunter, but I think for the way that he's building, it does make sense because your first 2 items are activatables. You get the Hextech GLP and the Zanya's Hourglass. And don't forget that Ingenious Hunter also lowers the cooldown on your Oracle Winds Trinket. That's something that a lot of people forget. So that means that when your Ingenious Hunter gives you, I think it's 40% cooldown on your item actives, that means you get 40% more sweeps. So that is really handy. I do think, does Eyeball Collection, does that include wards? That's just per champion takedown. Zombie ward is for wards, right? You kill a ward, you get a zombie ward. Okay. So that used to be really good with Ingenious Hunter, but I think they've nerfed it quite a bit. The zombie ward only lasts, isn't it 30 seconds or something now? It used to last like 3 minutes. Okay, it says it lasts 120 seconds. Either way, most people don't do zombie ward these days, but you still get more sweeps. So I think that Ingenious does make sense if you're doing 2 activatable items that are high impact. So the GLP is high impact because whenever you slow them with that, it's almost a guaranteed you're either going to hit them with your W or you're going to hit them with your E. So that's really, really handy to have that up as often as possible so you have more chances to make plays. And then also your Zhonya's. Of course, you want that up as much as possible because every time your ult is up, you want to be able to Zhonya's. And even being able to Zhonya's earlier than that could be really good. So that's why he goes Ingenious, but there's also an argument for going Ulti Hunter. That's what I see a lot of people going Ulti Hunter. So it's kind of up to you. It depends on what you want to do, but he is the the main man when it comes to Swain Support, and I think Ingenious is cool. It's always kind of dangerous with Ingenious Hunter because it's such a fun ability. It's such a cool ability. I mean, who doesn't like using stuff more?
Rory, you want some quesadillas?
Quesadillas, Rory, food.
You want some more milk? Here, let's get you some more milk. Rory.
Yeah, I think that can be really good.
What's wrong?
And then perfect timing can be good too.
Daddy's
Rory,
working.
look, okay, you sit here but you gotta be quiet, okay?
Want your milk? You want some more milk?
But you do get perfect timing, so that gives you 1 free stopwatch, and then it lowers. People forget with that rune that it also lowers the cooldown on your Zhonya's by 15%. So you stack that with Ingenious Hunter, with something like Cosmic Insight, and that can give you like a huge cooldown on Zhonya's. So it'll be up very, very often. And then I like doing the Cosmic just because, once again, you're going to have 2 activatable items. So you gain the 5% there, and then you get a 5% cooldown on your CDR and on your summoner spells and stuff like that. So I think that's a really good value, especially if you're using multiple activatable items. It's going to be really strong. That also affects your sweeper. So I think that's handy. Now, he doesn't go for Cosmic. He does approach velocity, so the thing that gives you extra movement speed when you go towards slowed targets. That can be good for getting you into the fight faster, so I just think that one's a bit harder to use. But if you do land the slow on somebody with like your GLP, then it does allow you to run in a little bit more, which is handy. So that does allow you to get into the middle of a fight and like activate your ult and use your Zhonya's to just kind of be a pest for the enemy. So I think that is potentially pretty useful, but it's just harder to use. So especially if you're starting out, I would probably just go with Cosmic Insight because it just works. You don't have to do anything special. But, he does do the approach velocity. And then you have your items. So I like the Hextech GLP, Zhonya's, Leandri's. Everybody kind of agrees that Zhonya's is super good on him because your birds keep flying out while your Zhonya's keep doing damage, keep healing you up. So that's really handy. Leandri's is very good. It's just kind of a standard on most of these supports. It's usually a later item on him, but just gives you some good percentage damage, gives you some extra health. So that is very handy. Now, GLP is the one that not everybody does, but more and more people are doing. I really like GLP. I don't know if we can find that on here. Let me see. This is one that, in general, I think is a really underrepresented item because most people just go for Ludens instead of this. But it's cheaper. It only costs 2,800, so it can come online pretty quickly. It's decent. It's got the 112% cost efficiency to it. And those bolts are pretty good. I mean, they're not as much damage as some of the other options out there, but it does apply a slow. And it can hit multiple people with the bolts. It gives the 20% CDR and 80 ability power and 600 mana. Yeah? Now, a lot of people will go for Rod of the Ages on him. I don't like that build, and the main reason is it takes 10 minutes to come online to get full efficiency out of it, and I just think that as a support, it's going to be too late. So yes, this is the most cost efficient of all. It's 2,600, and it does end up with 156 efficiency, so that is really good. But a couple of things that are wrong with that. Number one is it takes 10 minutes to get the full value out of it. So if you're not completing this until like 19 minutes or something, then it's the game's going to be over by the time it's fully charged half the time. And then it doesn't have any CDR on it, which Swain really, really wants CDR. It's more chances to grab people with E. It's more ults. It's just everything for him. So, it doesn't have the CDR on it. It does have the man on the health, which is nice. It does have more AP, but it doesn't have the utility. Yeah, it doesn't have the active, and it doesn't have the CDR on it. So I think that's rough. And you get full value. Like, as soon as you buy GLP, it's got the full 80 ability power, all the mana that you need, all that kind of stuff. It just comes, like, fully stocked, ready to go immediately. And the slow on that is really, really important, too, because that's going to allow you to hit your snares, hit your eyeballs, just do everything you want to do with Swain. The slow is very, very nice. It adds a lot of extra consistency to his kit, because one thing that we'll talk about here in a second, that's sort of a problem, is the lack of consistency with some of his abilities. There's a lot of potential to outplay. You want to drink that, Rory? There's a lot of potential to outplay. She's drinking like some pure chocolate from the chalky milk. She says, chalky. Anyway, so... You want some food now, Rory? So anyways, I think that that's probably the best thing to run. It solves your mana problems. It gives you much more consistency on your engages. Gives you a nice little spike in AP, so it's really good. And then you want Zhonya's really quickly. I would say second item's probably appropriate just because of the interaction with your ult. Then after that, it's kind of up to you. Old Bird does like Spirit Visage sometimes, which does give you extra healing. If they have a lot of magic damage, that could make sense. It would make you extra tanky, but you're not going to do a lot of extra damage, so just kind of up to you. That is something that he can do. Also, Spirit Visage is kind of expensive at 2,800, but if you do want more offense, then you can do Leandries as well. Leandries is obviously a really good combo with Hextech because you're going to slow everybody, and then you're going to run in and do the damage with your birds, and so everyone's going to be taking Leandries burn, so... I think that's pretty handy. But yeah, those are kind of the rune options and the item options for him. Now, why Swain support in general? Why are people trying to go towards this? Well, I've played it a couple of times, and I've had some people, we've talked in chat about what are the different, things about him that are cool. One, he's sort of semi-tanky AP that also has an engage. That's really weird. There aren't a lot of champions like that out there, especially some that are like mainstream. Really, your only AP threats that you're going to get are going to be things like Zyra and Brand. You should see what she's doing, honey. It's hilarious. I don't know if y'all can see that or not. She's like leaning all the way back. So she's like drinking. She's like drinking the chocolate, and she's also like getting a rush of blood to her head. At the same time, she's like going all the way backward drinking it. She's just drinking leftover chocolate down at the bottom. Left like chalky at the bottom.
Oh.
I just drank it a little bit ago. It's not that old. But anyway, so that's something that's rare, is someone who is sort of kind of tanky, although his base stats are kind of low, sort of kind of tanky, that hasn't engaged with his E. It does like okay magic damage. He has pretty good burst early on.
Do you want your own chocolate milk?
You want to go get some, you want some chalky, Rory, in the kitchen?
I'll make
We'll
you
go
your
get some
own chocolate milk.
So that's kind of rare. That gives him a unique sort of position in the meta. There aren't a lot of champions that do exactly what he does. So, so there's that. He has his uniqueness, and that's the first step of becoming like a popular meta champion, is you have to have something unique that sets you apart from other people. So he does have that going for him. He does do some pretty good burst early. So if you, especially if you take Electrocute, you hit your E, you pull them back. It's going to do like, some okay damage here, 70 damage here with a 0.5 ratio. You're probably going to hit them with Vision of Empire, which is a huge amount of damage. It's very easy for the enemy to dodge, but if you hit it, then it does a lot of damage. So it's going to do 100 at level 1 with a 0.7 ratio. And then your Q, if they're really close to you and you hit them with every single bolt, then it can do a decent chunk of damage. This has been nerfed over time, but it can do a decent chunk of damage there, and then you do a little bit of extra damage off of ripping them with the flock as well. So he can shock, he can shock people with how much damage. If he hits that E and then just unloads on them with everything, he can usually do over half of somebody's health. Sometimes one-shot him if it's a squishy that doesn't have any like magic resist runes. He can do quite a bit of damage early. So that is something to keep in mind. This also allows him, if he's constantly hitting his E, it will give him back some mana and will give him back some health. So that's pretty handy as well. So he does have that going on. He can engage through minions, which is really nice. So his E can go through a minion wave and still tag somebody on the way back and pull them through the minion wave. So that means that you can hide behind the minions and you don't have to worry about getting hooked or anything like that. So that is a really nice perk in a meta, especially where there are a lot of hook champions floating around out there. So that's, very similar to like Zyra-esque, where you can engage through a wave. So that's handy. He does have pretty good wave clear for a support. So, his W and his Q can clear pretty quickly. So as I say a lot of times when I'm explaining support, you don't farm a lot of support, but it still is pretty important to be able to push. Just so that, if the enemy backs, you can put him in the tower faster, or you can rotate to Dragon or Scuttle or Baron or whatever. So just having the ability to push is nice. And sometimes, after a team fight or something, it might just be you trying to defend a tower for a little bit. And if you have that kind of wave clear, you might be able to stall them out for an additional wave before you get help. So that's nice. He has that. And then he has pretty good disruption in fights. You can go in there with your ult, Zanya's, do your GLP, slow everybody, drop your W's. You can just do a lot of annoying things that can kind of zone people out a little bit as the game goes on. So you do have that going for you. So, he has okay engage. He's going to be tankier than something like a Zyra or a Brand. He can put out similar damage to those champions if you land everything. And, he does stack up. He does have some stacking mechanics, with his health. Every time he rips out a soul, he gets 5 extra health. So, he's got some stuff, but that's not going to be, insane. A lot of times you might get, 100 to 200 more health, over the course of a game. Yeah, you do get some extra bonus when you activate your Ascension. It doubles. So if you're getting 100 health, and all of a sudden it turns into 200 health. But the base number on this is so low. It's only 125. So in the early game, if you're only getting 50 bonus health, it'll give you 225 health. So it's okay. It's okay. So yeah, that's why people are trying him out. They're just trying a different sort of style. But let me tell you why ultimately I think he's for fun. Now, he is fun. I try to play him, but I just don't think that for the most part he's going to find a solid place in the meta. In the sense that he's going to be a top tier support. And here are a couple of reasons why that I've noticed playing him and playing against him. Now, I did win both games that I played him, but I did have a couple of good grabs early on, but for the most part I felt like I was being carried. So yeah, I do have a good win percentage with him, but it feels like I was getting carried, and I feel like every time we've played against this, we've ended up beating it. So here are a couple of problems with it as well. First of all, you don't have any mobility. And this is a big problem right now in this meta. There's nothing in your kit that speeds you up. You can take Phase Rush. Sometimes solo lane Swains will take Phase Rush to try to work around this. But you don't have any dashes. You don't have any jumps. You don't have any speed increases, unless I'm forgetting something. You do have stuff to kind of slow them down if you, try to hit them with a Vision of Empire to get away, or you hit them with a Never Move and run away. You've got some conditional stuff to, slow the enemy. But by and large, you don't have any mobility. And what that means is when you're trying to walk around and ward, or you're trying to rotate between lanes, and you get caught out, you're going to die. So you're going to die a lot, especially in games where your team is behind and you don't have vision control of the map, and you're trying to rotate to go help people. Either you're going to die, or you're going to have to play extremely conservatively with your positioning, and you're just not going to be able to make a lot of plays. You're just going to have to say, hey, I can't roam up this river right now, because if I see the jungler in the river, I'm probably dead, because I have no escapes. Versus someone like Rakan would be able to take that risk and try to run up that jungle, or try to run up that river to get to a fight in the mid lane, because if they spot the Kha'Zix or whatever in the river, Rakan can just get away, right? Or Janna can probably get away from him. So that's a huge, huge liability in solo queue, where it's so clowny. You have to rotate a lot. You really need to be trying to ward deep in their jungle to spot their jungler, because a lot of games hinge on how much pressure the jungler can put on different lanes, especially bot lane. So having no mobility is pretty rough. Also, if they have a hard engaged champ and they get on you, like a Leona or a Nautilus or Pike or something like that, it's like, yes, you are kind of tanky, sort of. Like, you're tankier than Zyra, sort of, kind of. But not that much more. You're still going to get deleted. You still have no escapes. Yes, Zyra and Brand don't have escapes either, but the thing is they have longer range, which we'll talk about that here in a second. And they have, well, he has pretty high single target burst early on. But I'm just saying that that's definitely, a liability. Next is he has very, very limited CC. So the only CC that he has really, like, if you hit your Vision of Empire, it does slow people for 2.5 seconds. And that is a very, very big slow if you land that. So that is good if you land it. And then your Never Move does root him for 1.5 seconds. So that's pretty nice. The weird thing about Never Move, though, that I've noticed trying to play him is that you have to be at this strange range where you have to be at, like, the perfect range to get this accurately. So you have to be about 800 range. Because if you're really close to them, if you're within like 500 range and you throw your E at them, it actually doesn't root them on the way out. It has to hit them on the way in. So then it has to go out for an additional 350 and then back for an additional 350. So that's just really awkward timing. It feels like, they have like almost 1 second to move or react to that in some ways. So it's just really bizarre for like mid-range fights, where someone is like 600 range, 550 to 600 range, trying to throw your E, because they have so much time to try to dodge it. It's really weird. Now, part of that is just I hadn't played him a lot, and if I was used to that interaction a lot more and just sort of the timing of that, it would probably be better. But it is a little shocking at first, because most stuff, you just throw it at them, you hit them, they're stunned, right? Like most hooks, everything like that. Versus this, they really have to be close to max range for you to like immediately stun them on impact. Otherwise, they're going to have a chance to dodge or flash or whatever. Or maybe you have to move. Maybe you're trying to dodge something. It's really awkward when you're first trying to learn it. So it can be worked around, if you get used to it. But that is pretty awkward, and it's very conditional. But those are your only two pieces of CC. And, if you're like standing right next to your AD carry and like Zed ults him, or Kha'Zix jumps out of nowhere, whatever, your E's not going to work, because it's just going to go through them. Then they're going to have your AD carry already dead by the time you hit them with the second part of it for the Never Move. So it's just kind of awkward. And obviously, Vision of Empire is going to be too slow for that. So that's what I mean by conditional. It's like this stuff can be good, it can be powerful if you hit it, but there's a lot of counterplay from the enemy. And especially when it's like code red, like something is about to try to kill your AD carry, you just don't have anything you can do for that, right? Like, you don't have any heals, you don't have any shields, you don't have any like really close range stuns that are effective. So I think that's a big, big liability. Another is he has limited per cost scaling. And what I mean by that is per amount of gold that you put into him, he does not have very good scaling overall. And a lot of this is because his items are expensive, and this is a problem with a lot of AP supports, but they typically, like Brand and Zyra are the most popular ones, will have really high base damage because of things with their passive. So like Zyra's plants add a ton of extra damage. Brand's passive with the percentage health add a lot of extra damage. Swain doesn't really have anything that does that. Yes, he does have the Ravenous Flock. You can click on people and do a little bit of extra damage every now and then. So there is that. It does help some, but I just feel like his damage over time, especially in the mid game, is just not as high as other people, and a lot of it is either single target or it's very paltry. Like this right here, what is it? Every damage per second, every bird, it does like 35 damage or something. Just like the damage is really slow, and over time, after the first like 6 levels or so, your first 6 levels you do have good burst when you put everything together. But once people start getting a little more health, once they start getting some magic resist, it's hard to crack through them. You don't do as much like just instant delete people as some of the other AP supports out there. So that can definitely be a problem. And because your items are so expensive, because you need GLP, which is 2,900, you need Zanya's, which is another, I think, 2,600. You want Leandri's, which is another 3,100. It's just a lot. It's a lot, especially when your counterparts like your Jannas are just going to be getting like Athenes for 2100, Ardent Censor for 2300, Redemption for 2100. They're spending like a third less gold than you on everything. And that's going to be pretty rough. Also, similar to that, you don't have like a really easy way to pick up assists in fights. So you have to actually hit people with stuff like your Never Move. I guess your Ravenous Flock or your Demonic Ascension, when you have that going, that will tag a lot of people. But, a lot of the enchanters, if you just like put a shield on somebody or just heal somebody, you're going to get like an assist for every single person in a fight, which is why champions like, like Janna, Soraka, Sona, all of these champs are just going to have like way more assists on average than something like Tahm Kench, because Tahm Kench has to actually hit people to get those assists. So anyway, Swain doesn't have like super simple ways to hit everybody with an assist, but it's okay. It's better than Tahm Kench, not as good as something like Janna. So what that comes down to is you don't get as much money because you're not getting assists on as many things. Maybe you average 3 or 4 less assists per game than something like a Janna. You're not going to have as much money as she does, and you're also not going to, your items are just more expensive, so you're not going to be able to afford your stuff as much. So very limited per cost scaling, and because like his base damage is okay, but it's not like super high, then Spell Pin is not as good on him. It's good, something like Sork Boots are good, but you have to buy utility items. You have to spend money on mana. You have to spend money on the Zanya's effect. All that stuff costs money, right? Versus when you're Zyra, you can just go for raw Spell Pin and damage. You don't need mana. You don't need like a cute little slow effect. You don't need Hourglass, right? So then you can just go Sork Boots plus either Morellonomicon or Sork Boots straight into Leandri's. And you're just going to have a lot more damage. Because remember, all that stuff isn't free. Like Zanya's, you're paying a lot for that active on Zanya's. GLP, you're paying a lot for, the active on that item. So it's, you're paying a lot for the utility. And that means that ultimately, like, as the game progresses, as champions start getting 2 or 3 items, you're going to do less damage than a lot of the other champions. You do have more utility. You do have the Zanyas. You do have some self-healing. You've got a slow for your team with GLP. You've got some engaged. You got stuff. It's just not as much damage. He's also pretty short range with a lot of his stuff. Zyra's effective operating range is about 800 with her plants. And then you think about, like, Brand, he's kind of short range. His E, I think, is like 600 or 650 range for the full stun. But he can still harass with his W at like, I think it's like 800 or 900 range. The Q is like 1,000 range. So you can still harass at a pretty good distance. Lux, of course, has insane distances on her stuff. Other popular champions like Vel'Koz and Xerath. The reason that those champs get played a lot of times is they have such huge harassment range that people just can't get them back, that they can stay safe from a lot of other engaged champs. That's not the same with Swain. Now, yes, his passive does have some good range on it, but like Death's Hand in particular is only 725. That's really close for someone who is kind of at least early game, a relatively squishy mage type of champion. Vision of Empire has huge range, but it's got a lot of counterplay to it. Your Never Move is 850, which is like okay, but it's not as far as some of the other engages out there. It's on the shorter end of the spectrum. It's okay. And then, of course, your Demonic Ascension is only 650 radius. So you really have to get up close and personal for those crows to hit people. And so that's dangerous. You have Zanya's at some point in the game, but it still means that you're going to have to get up a bit closer. And that's, going to be problematic. Then you just have really limited support for allies, and this is sort of what I just hinted to a second ago. You don't have shields, you don't have point-click CCs, your engage is very conditional with Never Move. You just don't do a lot, what happens if Zed runs at your 80 carry? What happens if an Aurelia is starting to just go off and zipping around everywhere and starts deleting your team? Or like a Jax is about to jump on your mage mid lane or something like that. Like, what do you do about that? And so that's kind of one of the major problems is he just doesn't have a big way to assist. Like Zyra and Brand, how do they assist? They do a hell of a lot of damage in team fights. Zyra can root and lock people up for 1.75 seconds with a root. And then she has her ult, which expands, has a huge radius, does a ton of damage with the plants, and then also knocks people up for an extra second. So, you can CC multiple people too. The roots can hit multiple people, and the ult can hit multiple people for over 2.5 seconds. Versus Never Move is 1.5 on a single target. I think it might actually be able to dealing magic damage to all nearby enemies and root them. Okay, so you can actually root multiple targets if you get that correctly. So he does have that. I just think it's a lot more conditional. And then Brand, has less CC, but his ultimate does, in team fights, basically guaranteed massive damage on everyone and forces them to break up their formation unless they want to take huge additional damage off of the explosions. So I just think that he just doesn't have the same, he doesn't have a lot of support. He's short range, very conditional type of stuff, no mobility. His scaling is pretty weak because you have to pay a premium for the utility that he has to have to function. The Zanyas, the GLP, you can't just go for double pin items early or boots plus Leandri's early like Brand and Zyra can do. So anyways, he is fun. He is interesting. If you do practice him, if you do get used to Never Move, you definitely can win. You can snowball really hard. Like the Vision of Empire, if you land your Never Move all the time and you land your Vision of Empire, it can do massive damage. So you can be a beast. You can certainly be really, really good if you get good on him. I just think it's going to be easier if you're really trying to climb. It's better worth your time to invest in Zyra or Brand or even something like Lux because they're just all going to have either higher team fight damage or they're going to have more utility in the case of Lux to sort of offset some of the other problems that they have. So anyways, hope you enjoyed this. If you did, let me know what you think in the description. Tell me the next one that you would like to hear about. I've already got a couple in mind that I might do, but I had some good suggestions on the last one. We'll see if we can get to them eventually. But yeah, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Go out, try this out on your own, see what you think about it. Just have a for fun mindset there. Just know that while you're trying to learn it, you're probably putting yourself at a disadvantage. So I'd recommend playing it in normals first. And then, like I said, some people out there do win with this. So I'm not saying nobody can win. Maybe you're one of the people that can win really heavily with Swain. But I think mostly for, what I would advise large populations of people that are in silver and gold for this is I think that if you're trying to win, if that's your goal, there are other champions that will give you a better shot. Although this can be fun. So thank you very much. Stay tuned for the next episode. And I'll see you then. Have a great day.